Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Today I am chatting with Grace. Now Grace last week came along on one of our Toubkal Treks to Morocco, and Grace, we found her on Instagram. She's got nearly 60,000 followers on Instagram. She travels a lot, but one thing that we discovered was that she travels solo quite a lot of the time and has never really done group travel. So we invited her along to our Toubkal Trek to see if she enjoyed it, and we're going to find that out today. So hello, Grace.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
That's all right. So, was this the first time you ever went to Morocco?
Yeah, this was my first trip to Morocco, and I didn't. Obviously, I've heard of it and I've heard of Marrakesh, but I was amazed it was only 3.5 hours away when I saw the flight time, and I thought, how have I never been? But yeah, that was my first trip to Morocco, and it was mind blowing. It was such a cool place to visit.
So, with regards to your Instagram, then, what is your kind of niche within Instagram?
I think definitely hiking. That's what I started doing. And it took off a lot during lockdowns. We couldn't travel as much. I've always been a massive traveler and I've traveled a lot. It was kind of my main priority in kind of getting a job to work, to travel. And then hiking took off, 2020, 2021. And then as soon as flights and travel became, a bit more doable again, I was back off jet setting and kind of joining my hikes with travels. So that's kind of my niche, is kind of hiking, traveling, and a lot of it, as you said, I do solo. And that started off because it was my only option, really. I reached a point in my kind of mid-20s where a lot of my friends had settled down or just didn't really have the same interests as me. And so I just kind of came to the decision of I either don't go or I go alone. And so I started going alone. And then I just started having such great experiences that it then became kind of my top choice to go alone. And my friends all now kind of nag me for not inviting them everywhere.
And that was kind of what attracted us to your Instagram. We want to get our trips in front of people who like walking, hiking, especially people in the UK who might have not have gone abroad and done it abroad. So that was kind of why we contacted you. But in terms of group travel, why is it that you'd never thought of group travel before? I
just think when I go on my solo trips, the things that appeal to me the most is the sense of freedom. So having every decision kind of is only mine to make. So when I go to sleep, what time I eat, what I eat and where I eat, and what time I get up, what kind of things I see, the itinerary, it's all on my terms. So it is quite a selfish thing that I enjoy. And so group trips are, it's funny because a lot of people find solo travel daunting, but to me, group trips are a little bit more daunting because I lose that power of control of what I'm doing. And I have to just kind of, go along with the flow. And so it was a new experience to me. And I did really enjoy it, probably more than I expected to.
So how would you say then your views on group travel have changed since you've done a group travel trip?
I think I really enjoyed the sense of safety. So when you do travel alone as a female, there are obviously intimidating factors, and there are times that you're kind of looking around thinking, am I safe? What am I doing in this situation that can ensure my safety? And that was the main thing that I realized about the group trip is I didn't for a second have that question in my mind, which I have a lot when I travel alone, of am I safe? I was 100% certain I was safe because I was with such a group of great people. And then I also really enjoyed on the hiking days, because we did a 4-day trek through the mountains, and I really enjoyed the fact that I had no responsibility over the route, and it really made the hiking more enjoyable because I didn't have constantly have to get my map or my phone out to check where I was. I didn't have to second guess if I was on the right path. So the downsides, which are only minor downsides when you travel alone, of responsibilities and safety, they're kind of just taken out of your hands, and you just get to enjoy the good parts without having any of those worries attached.
Yeah, I think that's, and I think if if you haven't really traveled before, like lots of people have traveled and they've gone and done, the standard 2-week all-inclusive holiday. But these trips are completely different in terms of, you're not in one place for the whole time. There's different things to do. So I think in that respect, group travel is a great way for people to go traveling for the first time in terms of proper adventurous traveling, I would say.
Yeah, and I think of people that haven't done that very often and aren't too au fait with traveling, with airports, with getting around, and even new countries are quite daunting and you don't really know what you're doing sometimes. But so yeah, for people that want to travel and explore more, but are maybe a little bit hesitant as to how to do that, I think group travel is a great option because A, you're meeting new people, which is always fun. B, you're having all these new experiences, but also you don't have to find out the places to go, the ways to travel, organising transfers to and from airports. And Marrakesh, for example, was a very vibrant, lively, amazing city to explore, but it can be overwhelming if you don't really know where you're going or what you're doing. And especially with visiting a country outside of Europe with different language barriers, etc., having a group leader and other people that are on the group as well to share that experience with is really helpful.
Yeah, I think if people have only ever been to Benidorm or Gran Canaria, then I think they might find Marrakesh a little bit daunting if they went there for the first time.
It's definitely a culture shock. It definitely took me by surprise. You can't stop looking around. There's so much going on and you're just amazed by the whole place was just phenomenal.
So had you heard of Mount Toubkal then before we suggested you join us on a trip?
I had, and it's funny because I bought a beanie. It was a blue beanie, and it was one of the first beanies I bought when I got into hiking, and it was called the Toubkal beanie. I'm guessing the company kind of named their beanies after different mountains, and so that's why I'd heard of Toubkal, and I always loved this navy blue beanie that I wore. And so for some reason, I did always have Toubkal in my mind from that, but I didn't know too much about it, and I didn't know it was the highest peak in North Africa. I didn't know the elevation, so I'd heard of it, but I didn't have much knowledge about it.
Okay, then. So obviously you went, the trip is an 8-day trip that you came with us on. Do you want to just talk us through the trip and what you experienced on each day?
Sure. So we all met, there were 11 of us that all met at the airport, and we travelled together to Marrakesh, and we got transfers to our Riad, which is a hotel that we stayed in Marrakesh. And it was great because we had a day and a half in Marrakesh just to kind of explore, wander around. There wasn't too much pressure on having to do everything with the group. There was an option to wander off if you wanted to, but also there were kind of set times of dinner and meeting points so that you could join in as and when you wanted to, which was lovely. We had like a group guided tour around Marrakesh, and then we had a briefing about our trek, which was going to be taken off the next day. So we kind of got in a minibus. We drove about an hour and a half into the mountains, and we began our trek to Toubkal. So what's really cool is that Toubkal, well, there's a village called Imlil, which is kind of in the middle of the trek that we did. Some people can just drive directly to Imlil and just have a 2-day hike of Toubkal. But what I loved about this trip is that we had a 4-day hike. So we actually started our hike 2 days before and we trekked to Imlil, which helped with the acclimatization because you're covering probably around 2,000 meters of elevation in those 2 days. Also just the scenery and the villages that we went through and like the bonding experiences that we had with the groups, it just really added like an extra element to the trip. So we had a 4-day trek with the 4th day being the hike of Toubkal itself. And it was really great because we had different levels of abilities in the team. There were people that had never climbed any mountains before. And then obviously myself, who is quite a regular mountain climber, but only in the UK. So I've never done anything to that height before. And we all just kind of found our own rhythm over the few days. There were a few of us that were a little bit faster, a few that liked to kind of take it a bit slower. So we'd take breaks throughout the hike and catch up. And then we all just pushed together to encourage each other up on that final day and all reached the summit together and took our summit photos and then, made our way back down and then had another day in Marrakesh to kind of wind down. We went for massages and dinner and then we all traveled home together as well. So it was a really a really great, like, diverse trip, like some city exploring, history and culture, and then also the trekking, the hiking, the staying in refuges and mountain huts and villages as well. It was kind of really diverse and unique.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you brought up the 2-day trek from Imlil, and we've never offered the 2-day trek from Imlil, and plenty of people do it. And how do you feel you would have got on if you had only gone to Imlil and did it from Imlil?
Oh, I would have struggled. I struggled a lot. I think I struggled the most in the group in regards to the altitude sickness. I really struggled with that. And it was something I didn't expect to be so debilitating. And I wonder how much I would have struggled if we hadn't have done those 2 days before. And I looked into the Toubkal Trek and I spoke to a few people who had done it before me. And I was a bit confused why they had only done 2 days and we'd done the 4. And it was only when I worked out the geography and what we'd done. And I worked out, oh, these people have just traveled to Imlil, whereas we walked to Imlil. And I wouldn't change it. I'm so glad we did it the way we did. Just because I just thoroughly enjoyed those 2 days of trekking. The scenery was phenomenal. But yeah, I just think it really helped prepare, not only myself, but I know it really helped prepare some of the other guys for what we were going to be doing there.
And in terms of doing it as a group then, do you think that assisted you getting to the top rather than if you had actually just turned up there and booked a guide and then went and did it yourself? Do you think that made a difference?
Yeah, I remember saying this to some of the group. I remember saying, I love my solo challenges and my solo hikes, but there is no way I would have got to that summit without that group there. There just isn't. I was so affected by the altitude sickness that at times I just wanted to I actually did crawl into a ball and just lie on the mountain for some time just to rest. And it was only knowing that I had all these guys kind of around me and supporting me that helped me up. And then I know it's the same for some of the other guys as well, because there were some people that really, really had to dig deep for that strength and motivation to get up there. And it's that group encouragement and support that makes so much difference in situations like that, when you're struggling for those like last mental bursts of strength to get up there. And then that celebration, we all cried at the top. All of us were in tears. It was a really emotional thing. It was really, really great.
Yeah, it's nice when you share it with another group of like-minded people, I always think.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, it was just the elements of, we had 3 Moroccan guides with us, and there was not, your safety was ticked off. The route was ticked off. We made sure that we were fully prepared with everything we needed. Our food had been cooked for us. It just took all of the kind of stress out, but also just having these people that you'd had 4 or 5 days of bonding with and got a real great friendship with, doing it together and helping each other up and having a laugh along the way. It's that morale that you really need.
And I'll say you had a UK guide with you. You didn't have a UK guide with you because she's German, but she's one of our guides from the Bucket List Company. And, as a company, like, we feel it's important for us to send out a representative from the Bucket List Company on all of our trips. Yeah. And, other companies don't do that. You'll fly in, you'll meet your local guides, and then they'll take you on the trip and drop you back. But I'd just be interested to hear like your thought process on how you feel having a representative from the company there that you've booked the trip through makes a difference.
Yeah, it really did. So our guide was Christina, and like I said, she was German, but her English was phenomenal. So there was no issue there. But yeah, I think from the off, I was wandering around the airport trying to find our group, just looking out for people that looked like they might be about to hike Toubkal. And Christina was looking out for me and spotted me, and so kind of got the group together. And it's just having that one person there that says that you can ask all your questions to, even just like, oh, what time is dinner? What time are we meeting in the morning? When's our transfer? Whereas I feel like we'd all just be kind of wandering around, bumping into things, not really sure of it was the organization really. But I think also people that haven't traveled much and maybe don't have as much confidence, it's important for them to have somebody there as a guide and as like someone to lead the trip. I'm fortunate enough, I've traveled a lot and I can wander around and ask questions and I know my way around an airport. But if it is someone's first time doing something like this, I think having the guide there is a real reassurance more than anything, as well as just helpful.
Yeah, that's exactly why we do it. And, Chris or our guides are always staying with the group the whole time. Now, I know, other companies do it and you'll meet the guide, but that guide's going to go home at the end of the day and then you're going to be left by yourself in the evening then. And we've always just had it that actually the guides stay with the group, and if they need anything, there's somebody there they can ask questions to.
And I just thought, especially on the day of the mountain trek, some of us were dropping like flies. We were really suffering with the altitude sickness and struggling to kind of get ourselves up and down. But I just thought it was phenomenal. And I said this to our guide, Christina, on the last day. I said it was phenomenal that despite her own struggles, we didn't see her struggle. She was there for us. She was there for the people that needed her. And again, yes, we did have the Moroccan guides, but having someone that we knew was our middleman between the Moroccan guides and us and in charge of our trip. But she just, regardless of her own hunger, her own sleep deprivation, her own, attempts to get up the mountain, she was a ball of motivation. And I know that she made the trip for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think, also as well, it's because, all of our guides have done the trip that they're leading before as well. So they can just answer absolutely everything. When you're in Marrakesh and you go, where should we eat tonight? They kind of know where to go out and eat to. You haven't got to think about that. You can just turn up, eat your dinner and go back to bed again.
Exactly. It's literally having a personal tour guide. And when you've got an element to the trip of a hike like we did, it's important to have the right kit. It's important to be well prepared. And as I said, I'm fortunate that I do hike quite a lot, and I felt like I knew what I needed to take, and I was quite comfortable with that myself. But as there were people there that weren't as familiar with hiking, it was really helpful for them to ask the questions they needed to ask to Christina, who, like you said, she's done the hike before. She knows her stuff and could give the right advice to the right people then. So
Toubkal is around 4,200 meters in elevation. How high had you been before Toubkal then?
I had only been, I've got cable cars up to some of the mountains in the Dolomites, which I think 2,000 to 3,000 feet maybe, but I'd never been that high. And my highest had been Ben Nevis. My highest physical climb had been Ben Nevis, which was on New Year's Eve last year, so less than a year ago. And that was a painful, difficult challenge for me, but amazing to do. And so Toubkal is now officially my leading highest mountain that I've ever climbed, which is really exciting.
Well, congratulations for that one. You joined the 4,000 meter club already.
I have, and I've got my T-shirt, which is like my little souvenir, my bucket list Toubkal T-shirt.
So, in terms of highlights on the trek, then, what would you take is your top 3 highlights from the trek itself?
From the trek itself, the views, the scenery, I could not stop taking pictures. If I hadn't have already told these guys that I was an Instagrammer, I'm sure they would have guessed it by how many times I whacked my phone out, because I was literally taking photos and videos constantly. The views were just absolutely incredible. I loved it. And I was just smiling and beaming because the scenery was just phenomenal. So I think number 1 would definitely be the views. Number 2 for me was the culture. Like, we walked through these amazing like mountain villages and huts that had kind of been built into the side of the mountains, and the way people lived there. Just kind of having this insight into people in their day-to-day lives as we were walking through, and these cute little kids running out and waving to us and singing us songs as we walked through the village, and people obviously carrying the mules or carrying things on their heads or their shoulders. And just the insight into how people live there. And then third of all, the food. We got our food cooked for us every breakfast, and lunch and dinner was cooked by our Moroccan guides. And it was really nice for me to try new things and to experience like the new kind of food, the food that they eat over there, and just have it all cooked for me, which was a nice treat as well.
Yeah, the food, you definitely get looked after well on one of our Toubkal trips. You sometimes wonder where you're putting it all, really.
Oh, I know. I took loads of snacks with me because I can be quite a fussy eater, and I made sure I had enough to get me through in case I hated everything. But I was eating like plenty of food. I really did.
And in terms of, I think the other special thing for me about the first 2 days of the trek that we do is actually how quiet it is with other trekkers. Like, did you actually see any other trekkers on your first 2 days before you got into Imlil?
No, we saw the first people we saw was at an orange juice stop on just above Imlil. So we'd been trekking for a day and a half at this point, and we hadn't seen anybody. And then once we got into Imlil, it was quite a shock to have gone from this serene, quiet, peaceful 2 days of trekking to this like kind of small town, but the hustle and bustle of tourists and people who live there. And then the trek then onwards was, I remember saying to some of the group members, oh, this is when we're going to be seeing those people on the trail now, because this is the more popular part. So it was nice as well to have the 2 days of quieter trekking and hiking and the serenity and just enjoying the peacefulness before we got into the wildness of Toubkal.
And how bizarre is it when you just before you drop down to Imlil and then there's a guy there selling orange juice?
I know. We found two guys who had perched themselves in little mountain huts and made their own orange juice stop, which I've got to say, after like hiking for hours and in the heat, it was really quite warm when we were over there. And I'd packed for really cold, making sure I was prepared. I'd packed for cold mountain summits. So it was really warm, and then getting this fresh orange juice stand. And they're really inventive. So they use the cold water from the streams to keep the orange juice and stuff cold. So it's a nice, very nice treat to get up to the top of a hike and have a freshly pressed orange juice given to you for like 50p or something crazy.
Yeah. It's gone up. I think it was 40p that the last Inflation is happening over there as well then. How did you feel when you were at the refuge and you looked up at about what you had to do the following morning?
Yeah, it was strange. We'd been trekking for 3 days, and then you look up, and I remember the first time we got the first sighting of the summit, and our guide pointed us out, and you look up and you think, oh my God, how am I going to get up there? But it was nice because you get to the refuge, and this refuge, I think it fits about 100 people. So there's plenty of people around, all there to do the same thing as you. And it's a real nice sense of community in a way. And everyone's, there eating and prepping and sorting their bags out. But yeah, you look up and you just are amazed. And we could see some like little bits of snow on the summit as well. And it was even more strange to then, we woke up at 4:30, and I think a lot of people do get up early to do the sunrise summit of Toubkal. And there was just amazing like views. Well, first of all, the stars were incredible. The stars were just some of the brightest I've ever seen. But as we set off at 4:30, there was this trail of headlights making their way slowly up Toubkal, and that was a pretty amazing sight. I really hope my camera captured that well.
And how did you feel finally when the sun came out then?
It was amazing. I remember I'd been kind of just, looking down and looking ahead and putting one foot in front of the other. And I suddenly looked up and turned around to look behind me, and the sky was just this pastel blues and pinks, and the golden sunrise light was like hitting the mountains. And I was just like, oh my God, I made the group all turn around to have a look, and we had a little photo stop. It was beautiful, really was.
So what would you say to people then who have trekked in the UK and are thinking about doing something like this?
I can't recommend it enough. It was just like, it was a completely different ball game. The UK has the most beautiful landscapes, and some of the mountains are phenomenal, and I love them, and I'll always hike here. But I think there was just something so different about the sheer like size of these mountains over there, and the endless views, just miles and miles and miles of mountaintops. The different climate and the different everything kind of adds to it. Like, you'll be walking on a trail, and then this donkey will just kind of wander past you, and it's just an amazing thing to add on to a different culture as well as hiking. So yeah, I would definitely recommend exploring it. It's a new experience, and it's just broadening your horizons and pushing yourself into different comfort zones, and having that pride of knowing that I'm in the 4,000 club now, and I've climbed a 4,000 plus meter mountain is I'm like pretty happy about that.
And is there anything that you wish you had taken with you? Is there anything that when you were doing the trek, you were like, oh, I wish I had packed that?
Let me think. I think actually, proudly, I can say there's not. I think I was pretty thorough with my packing. The one thing I was really glad I took is walking poles. It's recommended for most people, but I don't use them in typical hikes. But on halfway up Toubkal, I'd forgotten I had them in my bag. And Frankie, one of the guys on the group, said, is it time to get your walking poles out? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, it is. I do wish I'd taken warmer gloves. My fingers got freezing towards the summit, and one of the very kind Moroccan guides swapped gloves with me, so I had warmer gloves. I was really good, and I took earplugs and an eye mask, which I know a lot of people wish they'd taken. And I was very happy with that decision, because you are in a refuge and there are a lot of people around. And if you want a good night's sleep, then earplugs and eye mask are a necessity. But no, I was pretty good with my packing. I followed the kit list that we'd been sent, and obviously I know what works for me on hikes. So I had everything I need, thankfully.
And just talk through like how the baggage worked on the trip, like, because you're not carrying everything, are you?
No, and what is so funny is that until the day before the trip, I thought I was carrying my entire week's worth of kit on my back. I don't know how I missed that kind of communication. I obviously didn't read the email thoroughly enough, but so we were in a group WhatsApp, which was really helpful for the week before the trip, as we were all sharing ideas and planning. And I said, I'm really struggling getting everything into this 66-litre backpack. And someone said, you do know that the mules carry your bag up, don't you? And I was like, no, I didn't know that. So that was a really nice surprise that I didn't have to carry, 20 kgs on my back the whole time. So it works that you would take a big duffel bag with your general day-to-day stuff, your, toiletries, your comfy clothes, things like that. And then you take your day sack, which is anything from like 30 litres plus, nothing too big. And then your duffel bag follows you around, or sometimes beats you to the refuge, and that's carried up by the mules and the guides. So you are reunited with your bags every evening. Once you get to your accommodation for the night, you can kind of replenish your day sack. You can, you've got your comfies and your toiletries and your personal items. And then you've just got your day sack in the day. So it's really, really helpful, and gotta say, much easier than carrying like 20 kgs on my back that whole time.
Yeah, with that heat, can you imagine if you had to carry all of that stuff on that trek?
I would not have made it. I just about made it with my day sack, let alone with all my belongings for the week. I was expecting, to have to carry my sleeping bag and just everything. So I was really happy with that, and it was all just so seamless. You pack up your bag, you store them all in the front in the morning of wherever we're staying, and then the wonderful mules take them to our next place, and it's just again just takes any pressure off you, and just everything just kind of allows you to enjoy it rather than having to worry about anything else.
And how fit would you say people had to be to do a Toubkal Trek?
Well, I think fitness is one thing. I think it's like mental strength that you really need, and I wouldn't say you need a high level of fitness. I don't class myself as the fittest person. I feel like I do get out and walk a lot, but I'm still absolutely out of breath when I'm hiking any mountain. It's not by any means easy. So I think it's important to have a base level of fitness and to know that you can walk and you can walk with elevation as well, so that you're not going to be injured or anything. But I think it really comes down to just mentally pushing yourself. That's what it comes down to in the end. Because I think I technically had climbed the most mountains out of everybody in the group. So in that sense, I was the most experienced, but I was not the first at the summit. I was in the last few that crawled our way up with tears and just about got through it. So yeah, I think, it's important to train for these things and make sure you're in the best shape to help yourself. But really don't let it put you off if you're worried that you won't be able to do it, because if you've got a base level of fitness and you've got your mental strength and you've got morale and support from the people around you, then it's doable.
So would you do group travel again?
Yeah, I would. I'm already looking. I've got the bug now. I'm already looking into like Peru, Kilimanjaro, base camp Annapurna. I'm like, calm down, Grace.
So, well, I always ask everybody when we come to the end of the podcast, I always ask all the guests the one question is what is left on Grace's bucket list?
My bucket list is never ending. I feel like I get home, I have like a few days rest, and then it's on to planning the next one. So I really want to definitely do more 4,000 plus mountains now. I also really want to do the longer trek is what I genuinely enjoyed, getting up each day, knowing I've got several days trekking ahead of me, just the sense of adventure it brings. And I just love exploring new places. So for me, it's longer treks, more mountains and new countries. And I think some of the top of my list are Peru, Slovenia, Norway. I would love to see more of Italy. And I'd love to go over to Canada one day as well. But yeah, my bucket list is literally never ending, and it just is constantly being added to as well.
And it's really funny because, there's this thing about bucket list about, and you're doing it the right way. You're still young. You're just trying to get everything done you possibly can. Yeah. How do you see the term bucket list? Because, we get different opinions on it, really.
I think it's good. I think there's, I live my life thinking, there is no time guaranteed left. I could have a week left on this earth. Do I want to be worrying about anything other than how much I can fit in my life? And I've always lived that way, which makes savings hard because I'm really bad. I'm so impulsive and I want to experience everything now. But yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with having a list of things that you want to experience and achieve before you kick that bucket. And we never know when that's going to be. And it's good to think about it like that because it's important to know that time is limited. So fit as much in as you can and literally don't worry about the less important things. Just do what's going to make you happy and make as many memories and have as many amazing experiences as you can in the short time that we all have here.
Well, Grace, thank you ever so much for joining me today and talking through your Toubkal Trek. It was a pleasure to have you on there. Where can people find you and follow you on the socials then?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, which is Grace's__adventures, and the same on YouTube. It's Grace's Adventures, and I'm already starting to edit my Toubkal YouTube video, so I'm very excited to get that out, and that should be out within the next, hopefully by the time anyone listens to this, it will already be out because it'll be out soon.
So we will make sure we put links to all of those in the show notes. Thanks ever so much, everyone, for listening. Please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. And that way we can really get more people listening and hearing about everyone's adventures. Again, thanks ever so much for listening, and we will see you next week. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.